All right, let's dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book that pretty much turned the world of personal finance upside down for millions of people. This isn't about complicated spreadsheets or anything like that. Nope. It all boils down to a simple story about two dads and two completely different ways of looking at money. Let's get to it.
And boom, right out of the gate, you see the core idea. One dad's advice was to become a good employee, the other's was to become the owner. It sounds like such a small difference, right? Just a few words. But that tiny shift in perspective, well, it's the foundation for everything else in the book.
So let's talk about these two dads. Kiyosaki's poor dad was his actual father, a brilliant man, highly educated, had a PhD, but was always struggling with money. Then there was his rich dad, who was his best friend's father. This guy, he dropped out of school after the 8th grade and ended up becoming one of the richest men in Hawaii. I mean, the contrast is just incredible.
And this gets right to the heart of their mindsets. It wasn't really about their income, it was their whole philosophy. For poor dad, the love of money was the problem. But for rich dad, he saw it completely differently. For him, the lack of money was the real issue. That's what causes all the stress and pain.
Oh, this is such a powerful little detail. Think about it. When you say, "I can't afford it," that's a statement. It's a full stop. Your brain just shuts down. But when you ask, "How can I afford it?" well, that's a question. It forces your brain to get to work, to start solving problems. It's the difference between a mental dead end and a mental workout.
So these completely opposite ways of thinking lead us to a concept that, honestly, a lot of us are stuck in without even realizing it. It's called the rat race. You know the feeling? You're working harder and harder, but you never seem to actually get ahead.
So what drives this whole thing? According to Rich Dad, it's these two emotions right here, fear and greed. The fear of not being able to pay your bills is what gets you out of bed in the morning to go to work. But then, the moment that paycheck hits your account, desire or greed kicks in and you start thinking of all the new things you can buy.
And this combination of fear and desire traps you in this endless cycle. You get up, you go to work, you pay your bills. And you just repeat it, over and over. And the crazy part is, getting a raise usually doesn't fix it. When your income goes up, your spending just goes up with it. The hamster wheel just spins faster.
And this is the real tragedy of the rat race. People become slaves to their paycheck without even knowing it. They never take a step back and ask themselves, wait a minute, is there a better way to do this? Am I just working to pay bills, or am I actually building something for my future?
But here's the good news. Rich Dad says there is a way out of the trap, and it's not about working harder or winning the lottery. The escape route is through just one thing: financial literacy. It's about learning the language of money.
The entire foundation for escaping the rat race, according to the book, really just comes down to one single, incredibly simple rule. If you can get your head around this one idea, it changes everything.
And there it is. Rule number 1. You have to understand the difference between an asset and a liability, and then spend your life buying assets. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But this is exactly where most people get it wrong. Okay, so forget all those complex definitions from accounting class. Rich Dad's definitions are all about cash flow. Which way is the money moving? An asset, quite simply, puts money in your pocket. Think of a rental property that pays you every month, or stocks that give you dividends.
And a liability? Well, it does the exact opposite. A liability takes money out of your pocket, month after month. This is stuff like your car payment, credit card debt, and, controversially, the house you actually live in. Let's see how this all looks in practice.
So let's look at how this cash flow works. For a poor person, the pattern is really simple and kind of brutal. Money comes in from their job and it goes straight back out to cover basic expenses. Notice the asset and liability columns? They're totally empty. There's nothing left over to build any wealth.
Now, for the middle class, the pattern is really just a fancier version of the same trap. As their salary increases, they don't buy assets. They buy bigger liabilities, like a mortgage and car loans. And those liabilities create even more monthly expenses. And that asset column, still empty. But now, look at the cash flow of the rich. This is the great escape in action. They use their income to buy assets first. And those assets, things like real estate, stocks, and businesses, start to generate more income. And eventually, the income from their assets pays for all their expenses. Their money is now working for them.
Now, this is probably the most controversial idea in the whole book. Why is your house a liability? Well, simply because it takes money out of your pocket every single month. for things like the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and repairs. It doesn't put money in your pocket unless you're renting it out and making a profit.
So, just using those super simple definitions, I want you to take a second and think about your own situation. Does your home put money in your pocket or does it take money out? The answer to that question reveals whether you're building an asset column or just collecting liabilities.
And all of this brings us to the final core lesson from the book, and it's the one that really ties everything together. Once you understand the game of assets and liabilities, the path forward becomes crystal clear. There's this awesome story about Ray Kroc, the guy behind McDonald's. He asked a group of MBA students what business he was in. Of course, they all said, the hamburger business. He just shook his head and said, I'm not in the hamburger business. My business is real estate. See, everyone thought his profession was selling burgers, but his business, the thing actually building his wealth, was owning the valuable land under every single franchise.
And that's the distinction you have to make for yourself. Your profession is what pays the bills, it's your job. But your business is your asset column. So when Rich Dad says you need to mind your own business, he means you need to focus on building that asset column.
So here's the game plan. You keep your day job. That's your profession. It pays for everything. But you start using the income from that job to build your business, your collection of income-producing assets. That right there, that's the path to real financial freedom. And really, that's the big takeaway from all of this. It's about a shift in focus. Stop thinking only about your next paycheck or your next promotion. Start thinking about your next asset. That mental leap, from your income to your assets, that makes all the difference in the world.
Ultimately, your financial life is just a story that's told by numbers. So if you were to draw out your own cash flow pattern today, what would it look like? Is it telling the story of someone trapped in the rat race? Or is it the story of someone starting their great escape?